Hi, I'm Dan Alasso. This is Making History, and I'm going to begin something a little bit different today. It's going to begin with current events, but it's going to move on to religion. So hang on for that. But first, in the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination, a bunch of people of a variety of political stripes have begun doing very strange things. And I have to say, I've been surprised how many people have descended into both meanness and stupidity, posting hot takes on social media apps like TikTok, either celebrating the cold-blooded murder of a young man whose ideas and words they hate, which apparently is the new definition of hate speech, or celebrating when these nasty and dumb people lose their jobs or have their businesses boycotted. I suppose in both cases, these people are a tiny minority of the millions of people who either supported Charlie Kirk's point of view or rejected it. They're just the most visible and audible. I have to remind myself every day. And I should turn away from that dumpster fire as much as I possibly can while keeping an eye out that no one on either side is able to sneak in legislation or executive orders or anything else that would curtail actual freedom of speech. One of the things that I have been seeing, though, that actually began long before the tragedy last week, but may have been accelerated by it, is a foregrounding of religious messaging in the conversations about what's wrong with America and what to do about it. Now, I didn't follow Charlie Kirk. When he first appeared on the scene over a decade ago, I think I even briefly mistook him for the former child actor Kirk Cameron, who I think may have flirted with being a conservative spokesman very briefly. But over the last few years, I did become more familiar with him, and I did become aware of him before last week. He was instrumental, I think, in shifting the youth vote and getting Donald Trump reelected. And I have been seeing his videos in my YouTube feeds for over a year, and I've often watched them. Now, I've never attended one of these campus events, and I haven't watched enough of the videos, honestly, to form a real opinion of Kirk's beliefs or of the tone with which he argued them. His detractors say that he was mean and abusive. His friends say that he was kind, and they portray him as kind of a happy warrior. I don't know, but it does seem to me that everyone agrees that he was extremely religious and that his positions on moral issues and possibly even his delivery of those ideas was motivated by his faith. Now, I'm old, so I remember decades ago when it was easy to make fun of the fairly ham-handed ways that corrupt evangelical preachers would throw their weight behind candidates who they hoped would battle for their causes. It wasn't difficult to reject the uptight complaining about song lyrics. And there was a pretty healthy secular movement on college campuses and on the web, which was newer at that time. The new atheists seemed smart and hip and triumphant. Their four horsemen were publishing best-selling books. The Freedom From Religion Foundation was making steady progress, reaching people, and was doing a pretty good job in holding the line against the occasional statue of the Ten Commandments that somebody would put up on a courthouse lawn. What happened? Well, Daniel Dennett died. Christopher Hitchens supported the Iraq War and then died. Sam Harris became a meditation guru and then embraced the idea of lying to the public to achieve political ends, like enforcing COVID orthodoxy or harming Trump. And Richard Dawkins is now trying to preserve Western civilization by saying that he's actually a cultural Christian. On the other side, people like Jordan Peterson, who won't really even admit whether or not he himself is religious, have begun couching their psychology and their self-help advice in religious language and metaphors. Conservative commentators like Tucker Carlson have begun arguing that the secularization of American culture has eliminated the moral base on which most communities were built. More extreme commentators like Megyn Kelly have begun claiming that the absence of religion is the biggest problem in America today and is probably the source of all the other problems. And at the most extreme, commentators like Candace Owens have begun arguing that there are satanic cabals running the world from the shadows. Now, recently, a couple days ago, discussing the Kirk assassination and its fallout, Megyn Kelly said that the biggest issue leading to his killing was, quote, the absence of religion in the public square and in people's hearts. I think, she continued, the absence of religion is the most dangerous, pernicious thing that's happening in America, in its history. And it's happened over the past 30 years. It's been absolutely, willingly, actively erased, and it's being replaced by this vacuous evil that now is called wokeism. And then, after a few more words, she continues, where we have these identity gods that are so empty and dangerous. Now, while I think she makes an important point here, the history is not correct. America was not a pious Christian nation, as she implies, until the 1990s. There's a long history during which different parts of the American population were more or less religious, and it changed over time. Among other things, it led to a deliberate separation of church and state by the founders. And then it led to adding "In God We Trust" to our currency in the 1950s. So there's a lot to unpack and understand there. Even in the world of science, evolutionary biologists like Brett Weinstein and Heather Heying have been suggesting that ideas or beliefs can be objectively false but metaphorically true if they lead to advantageous behaviors that enhance survival or fitness. This seems to open the door to validating religious belief if it confers an advantage in evolutionary selection. Now, I have some problems with this idea, especially surrounding the point at which genetic evolution ends and mimetic competition begins. But I think I'll need to address them more fully another time. The overall point seems to be that I'm beginning to think that a somewhat reasonable argument can be made that secular humanism has failed to replace religion in American society, in the sense that it has failed to extend itself beyond a fairly narrow demographic of kind of college-educated middle-class professionals. This is not to say that there have never been any working-class atheists. A lot of my early work as a historian was about pursuing them. But I am beginning to think that secularism as a movement didn't really do an adequate job explaining that in lieu of a set of commandments or religious moral teachings, people were going to need to become responsible for their own ethics and moralities that they would work out for themselves. Now, obviously, some people got this idea. When he was asked why, as an atheist, he wasn't going around doing all the raping and murdering that he wanted, Ricky Gervais famously answered, I am. None at all. Gervais doesn't need a commandment to tell him what's right and wrong, because he's thought about it. Unfortunately, not everybody has. Plenty of people seem to have fallen away from religion, but not into something else. Instead, they've often just embraced materialism or consumerism or the imperatives of pop culture. And it's even worse, I think, for followers of materialism in the Marxist sense. And the effect of all of this in 2025 America is that the people calling for a return to faith seem to have a point. Now, I don't think they do in the long run. I don't believe in the supernatural tenets of any of the religions that people are pushing as cures for what ails us. And I don't think that retreating into these historical belief systems is the only way to have an understanding that there is something bigger than myself, or to try to live a moral life. People like Carlson and Kelly say again and again that people who don't believe in a God want to be a God, or maybe think they are a God. And I don't think that description really fits me. But I do think that it's probably time to begin a conversation with these ideas. So that's what I'm going to begin to do in this blog. So from time to time, respond to things that some of these proponents of returning to morality via religion say, and I will try to contextualize them historically and maybe give some historical counterexamples. So I hope people will find that interesting. Hope you found this a little bit interesting. Thanks for watching, and I will see you very soon.